Hi, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Shannon. I'm a homeschool mom to a 4th grader, and today I wanted to walk you through how I use Trello and set up Trello for my homeschool planning. Homeschool overwhelm is real, especially when you work full-time. This is my secret sauce for embracing the madness with extreme organization. Trello is basically the engine behind our homeschool. It handles the daily chaos, gives me flexibility, and it helps me with the heavy lifting during the school year. Before we jump in, I do want to mention that I personally use the paid version of Trello. So throughout this video, I'll do my very best to point out any features or functions that may only be available on the paid version. All right, let's jump in. I've shared my Trello setup before, but a lot has changed since that original video, so I wanted to do a full updated walkthrough of how I currently set up our homeschool board for the year. So I like to do as much heavy lifting as I can before the school year begins instead of doing it daily or weekly or even monthly. Trello will let me build the structure once, and then during the year, I'm mostly just managing and adjusting. One of the biggest advantages is the flexibility. Life happens, homeschool life happens, illness happens, appointments, burnouts. When you miss a day in a paper planner, sometimes it creates this giant domino effect where everything feels ruined. But with Trello, I can simply drag and drop things around. No erasing, no messy planners, no adding to the sense of overwhelm. So before I even start showing you how I build out my board, I kind of wanted to talk to you about what I make sure I have in place first. The very first thing I do is I decide what subjects we're teaching for the year. Once I know the subjects, I decide what curriculum we're using to teach those subjects and what our schedule or rhythm will look like for the year. I also make sure to try to have all our important calendar dates at my fingertips. For example, holidays, breaks, testing, vacations, appointments, extracurriculars, and then other special events or things like the last day of school or maybe when our ES is visiting. I always create cards for these because I want those interruptions intentionally layered into our school year, just like they would be if I were planning everything on a paper calendar. After I have my subjects, curriculum, and all those need to know dates figured out, I can start building my board. And what you see on the screen right now is what my board for next year is going to look like. Usually I will have a theme that I like to carry kind of throughout. This is for me. This is like a visual thing for me. I'm a very visual person. So when I build my board, the first thing that I do is give it a title. So this is the 2026-27 homeschool 5th grade board. And you can see, if you click on it, it'll let you edit the title. I'll give you a glimpse of what some of my other boards look like. So for example, this is this year's board, 2025-26 homeschool planner. And my theme was this flower theme. Okay. So now I have the board. When you build the board, none of this will be here, but I'm going to walk you through how I set all this up. Okay. So in Trello, each column is called a list, and the items that go on the list are called cards. So I start with a to-do list, and I make this list red because when I do my weekly planning, I've trained myself to always check anything red. As things pop up that need to be done, I'll add them here. To change the color of a list, you would click the three dots in the top right corner, and then you could change the color. I believe that the list color is a paid feature. And before I had the paid feature, I did my boards without the colored lists, and it was fine. But it's just now that I have the paid feature, I'm obviously going to use as many of the functions as I can that will make my life easier. So my to-do list, I make red. So when I'm planning, it just sticks out to me to check. As for the other colors of the other lists, there isn't really a huge meaning behind them other than visually breaking up the board for me. Okay, so let me throw a basic in here just in case you're completely new to Trello. How do you even make a list? So when you go into Trello, your board will be, it'll just have whatever image they make the background. So you would see an image, and then you wouldn't see any of these lists. You would just see add another list. So you would click on this, and you would enter the title of the list, add list, and then your list appears. And then you would click on this to add individual cards. Okay, so I have my to-do list. The next list that I create is a done list. This is where I drag lesson cards as we complete them. And I try to do this every night while I'm grading. I use the cards as a guide to reverse plan in my paper planner. So as I'm moving them over to done, I'm jotting down what we've done in my paper planner. So Trello is our plan, and my paper planner is our reality of what we actually got done. So the next thing I do is I create my weekday list. So that's Monday through Friday. Once I have those lists created, I start populating our schedule or our rhythm using the cards for each subject that we teach that day. So for example, next year we'll teach grammar Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Spelling, same, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then for any subjects that I alternate, I capture them both on a card. So for example, I don't necessarily alternate grammar and writing, but the curriculum we use alternates it itself. It doesn't alternate it, but the first half of the year is grammar and then the second half is writing. And so I use this card for both because this is where I put all of our EIW is under this card. And then geography and science, I do alternate. So that's why this has both of those subjects on there. And then this system represents our rhythm. So I know Monday, this is what our rhythm looks like. Tuesday, this is what our rhythm looks like, and so on and so forth. So after our weekly schedule is built out, I start building out the second half of my board. The way that I structure my board overall is that the first half is our weekly schedule and day-to-day, while the second half is the area I use for weekly planning. For the weekly planning half, I start with a list that houses all of our calendar headers. This is where those need to know dates come in handy. And I'm honestly a little extra with this. I design custom images for these cards so they match whatever the theme is I'm currently using. And as I mentioned earlier, these cards help me intentionally layer holidays, breaks, testing, and special events into our schedule as we approach them. And as you can see in here, I don't just have holidays and stuff. So I have just plain cards that I use when I'm doing things like my subjects, or as you see, as I get into the curriculum piece, you'll see some of these and different color variations, again, just to kind of visually help break things up for me so I can glance and absorb like what I'm looking at more quickly. And I don't always use them literally. For example, I might not only use the Halloween card to indicate Halloween itself, but also to highlight that an activity is Halloween themed. So if I do something seasonal outside of our normal Friday seasonal block, I can still quickly recognize it visually. And I'm going to create a separate video where I kind of walk through how I design the images for these cards, and I'll try to make sure to link that at the end of this video, or have that be the video that's recommended at the end of this video, for the people who are as psychotic as me when it comes to like visual things. Okay, so the next two lists that I create, they really act as bookmarks. So I always keep them collapsed, which I believe collapsing a list is a paid feature. And I don't actually ever put cards on these lists. They're just used for visual stopping points. So one marks where planned subjects go after I finish weekly planning for them. And the other is where I stage subjects that aren't currently being planned, whether that's because they alternate weekly or because they're only used during certain times of the year. Okay, so this next part is the most important part and definitely the heaviest lift. This is where I start building out lessons by creating a card for every lesson through the year and making sure everything needed for that lesson is attached directly to the card. And this can include links, checklists, images, PDFs, videos, notes. And so for this part, every subject gets its list. And every lesson gets a card. And sometimes I break it up kind of visually for me, so I can have a better idea of what the lessons are for. So with grammar, we start off with the intro, and then we go into identifying parts of speech. And then we go into a common problems, apply parts of speech. So I know all these lessons are going to fall under that bucket. Math is broken up by units, and the lessons underneath each unit listed out. And I have, so for example, I just opened up a grammar card and I put in here what page on the workbook she'll be doing. And then I also link on here. If you go to add, I go to attach. This is where I would add the link to her video that she would watch before she would do the workbook page. So I add the link here, and then I would type in here lesson, I think this is 21. Oh, lesson 2.1. So then when she sees the link, she just sees lesson 2.1. And for math, I have a checklist of books and materials. So this really is for me. This isn't necessarily for her, but she can always look and see, the things that she needs to have also for the lessons. Because I mean, let's be honest, sometimes she will keep me in check and be like, "Hey, I saw on Trello we're supposed to have this book. If I forget to bring it to the table or something." Or I don't even do math with her. Her dad does math with her, but I mean, with the subjects that we do, that there's many times where she's checked me. Okay. So basically, that's how I have every subject structured. And so, okay, so social studies, you can see a different type of card here, a Halloween themed card. And this is visually telling me, okay, pause what we normally are doing. And this, have timed it to where I know when we're going to be doing these lessons. And after California should be around the time that spooky season starts. So now we're going to implement these two books that I have. And I have a little note in here for me. Add these reads to your 50 States lessons during spooky time. And so that is that. I will put supplemental things in here. And so as we're going through our lessons, things that I would like to add because they are on theme or topic, maybe pause our regular spine and do more deep of a dive into a certain topic. So I want to do a deep dive in the Revolutionary War this year. And I also want to pause our spine at another time and factor in beautiful feet and then go back to the spine. And so I capture that in here with cards as well. Here's another holiday themed one. I want to pause whatever we're doing in literature around Christmas time and make sure to read Velveteen Rabbit. Spanish, I still need to plan out. Same with art. You can see, like, if you're using the paid version and you collapse, you can see the number of cards on here. So I can tell these ones aren't planned out because the little numbers. Whereas nature study, I already started building out. And the way we're doing nature studies this year is it's nature studies / cultural block, to where we'll cover nature studies and also like cultural things during this learning block that we have on Fridays. And then health and life skills, I still need to build that out, and any extra unit studies I'm adding for the year. Okay, so this is where the magic really happens. So once I have all my lessons built out, when I sit down to plan for the week, our weekly schedule framework is already laid out. So unless there's a reason the rhythm needs to change, I basically am ready to go. I'll check my to-do list and make sure that there's nothing there that needs to be done. And then I simply work subject by subject, dragging and dropping lessons into place as I move down the curriculum list and across the week. So what that would look like is I would grab grammar, I would move it over into my week, and I would just drag and drop this under grammar for every day that we're going to have grammar. That's it. I'd collapse this. I would move this to behind my planned bookmark. So I know grammar is planned out. Math, same thing. put it under math. We don't do math on Tuesdays. Oh, I already got math that day. Okay. All right, that's it for math. Move it behind the planned card. Math is done. Now we have science. But science, I alternate with geography, and geography is what we start with for week 1, so I won't be doing science. And so typically I would have these 2 bookmarks after all these. Actually, let's just do that now. That way it's easy to keep things clear, like especially like with the alternating. Okay, and I can get rid of that. You archive a list to get rid of it. Okay, so we start with social studies. All right, or not social. Well, yeah, geography. Okay, so we're doing it Wednesday and Thursday. Okay, social studies is done. Move it behind planned. History, we do 2 days a week, Wednesday, Thursday. What note do I have on here? End of chapter 1, beginning of chapter 2. So this would go there, beginning of chapter 2. Okay. Okay, so you get the idea. As I keep going, I'm filling out behind the bookmark of what is planned, and then what's to the left of the planned bookmark is all the things that I would still need to plan for the week. And then when I'm done, these would all be filled out with the lessons underneath them. Now, once I'm done with planning the week on my board, I then would copy the lessons over to my daughter's board, because her board is going to look different than my board. She doesn't need the second half, the right half that has all the lessons and the framework for planning. She just needs the weekly schedule / rhythm. So basically, she only has this first half of the board, and then she just sees the weekly lists or the daily lists, and then what lessons she'll be doing underneath the subjects. One of the paid features that Trello just implemented very recently has made this process even faster, because I can go in and select by clicking shift. There we go. This little arrow pops up. I click on that, and then while I'm in this function, it will let me check other cards too. So basically, I don't select the headers, the subject headers. I just select the lessons, because her Trello is a completely different theme. It's going to be themed to something that she enjoys and she wants to look at every day. And so after I select the lessons, I would just select copy, and then I would choose her board. So I would choose her 5th grade board. Then I would pick what list I want them under. This is Thursday, so I would pick Thursday, and I always pick like um, I start at 3. This is just where the cards will be dropped, and then you can arrange them under her subject headers. I picked 3 because the first card is usually her warm-up card where she's going in and doing her start of the day checklist, and then the second card is going to be a subject, and then this would place him in the 3rd spot under the first subject card, and then from there I just distribute them across her board. One other thing that I wanted to talk about is the labeling. I don't have these set up with labels yet. Let me show you my current board. So this is this year's homeschool board, as I had mentioned. And so you can see, like, for the most part, I just did color headers. I didn't do the images. The images were mostly for holidays or other things, but for the subjects, I just did like the regular colored card. So, but you can see when it comes to labeling, I'll have the labels of what subject they fall under and the path of that. So spelling is ELA. So I have ELA as a label. I have spelling as a label. And sometimes I'll put the curriculum as a label. I've mostly just been kind of sticking with the classification of like the subjects. And one of the reasons I do this is for like alternating days. Since before, what I would do is I would change these. I would change this to whatever I'm alternating it with. In this case, it was history. And so every next week I would change this to history, and then I would change it back to science. So next year, the first year, I implement the slash system where it's like science slash geography. And so then I think that this labeling is really going to help, because then I'm seeing exactly what subject we're doing, because it'll be labeled either science or geography. And then the color coding I used for the labels, I'm not necessarily married to, but the way that I have this year set up is like all ELA is red. So, my ELA label is red, spelling, grammar, anything that would fall under that umbrella is red. Electives are purple. Anything that falls under science is green. Like, that's kind of how I color coded it this year. I don't know if I'm going to stick with that for next year. I'm not really sure. But it's just how I broke up and organized this year's. And another area where labeling could be important or beneficial depending on what you could use it for is, because I slide everything over into the done column, if I just need to see what we've done in math, where we are in math, and what we've done up until this point, I can, go in and filter math, and then it's going to show me everything that we have coming up for math, and then but also in the done, it'll show me everything that we've done with math, which just makes it a whole lot easier when I'm looking for something specific within a subject. So yeah, this is how I use Trello in my homeschool planning. My goal here is building a homeschool system that bends instead of breaks. I have enough on my plate, as everybody does, right? And so any way I can simplify this for me, I'm always constantly trying to make things as efficient as possible. Trello is really the engine that handles the chaos, giving me flexibility. My paper planner still has an important role because I do love the tactical side of planning and especially reflection. But Trello is honestly what keeps the day-to-day logistics functioning in our homeschool, especially because my daughter's old enough to where she can use it now. And so I can do all the planning, move it over into her board, what she needs to see, and she can jump on and start her day. Um, Again, that's where being able to move the cards around based on our rhythm is really important. I'm super intentional with our rhythm, especially because I work full time. I very specifically sought out an East Coast hours job. I'm on the West Coast, but my goal was if I can have a good majority of my work done before she even wakes up, then when she does get up, she gets on her Trello board and she starts working through her independent stuff. By the time she's wrapping up her independent work, I'm wrapping up my work day. And then together we start doing the collaborative subjects. And having that flexibility to just change our schedule around so easily, and it reflect that on my end and on her end, it's just honestly, it's a game changer in our homeschool. And so I hope that this helped somebody if anybody was considering using Trello for their homeschool planning. Um, I know that there's a couple videos out there. There's not a ton. I kind of been learning as I go what works best for us, and what best works for us might not work for somebody else. And maybe somebody has different ways that they do things that works for them, and that's great. But I definitely just like to share what works for us just in case it does speak to somebody else or even just inspires something else, you know. If you watched it up until this point, because this is a long one, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I really am trying to be much more intentional about getting videos out. And until next time, bye.